Isn't life so amazing? Sometimes it can get crazy, but hey, that's okay. We've got another day to make mistakes and say sorry. There's no sense in our worry, 'cause all we can do is try our best to make
and
it through
welcome to
with
the Well, I Fucked That Up
love.
podcast. My name is Lauren Malone, and I am properly excited to be joined by this amazing guest today. And those of you who listen regularly, those of you who follow me, know what a massive Neighbours fan I am. So this is absolutely a dream come true to be sat here chatting with the one and only Alan Fletcher, actor and musician, probably best known by us in the UK as Dr Karl from Neighbours. Fletch, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
Oh, look, I'm terrific, and I'm very sorry. In fact, Lauren, you reached out to me a long time ago, and I put a little flag on your email, and it was only very recently where I thought I've really got to get in there and find out what I've missed on my emails that I was so embarrassed to contact you. So I'm delighted to be here and that you would have me.
Oh, bless you. And what's so funny is I remember sending you that email just on do you know what? Why not? Like, shoot my shot, ask Fletch if he'd like to be on my podcast. The first episode, I think, had come out when I sent that email. So I didn't know anything really about podcasting.
Oh, wow.
Brand new.
I am slow.
Oh, no. And when I got your email like last week, I was like, I nearly fell out of bed. I was very excited. So,
great.
really pleased, and no need to be embarrassed. My emails are a disaster. It's an absolute state. So, Fletch, I wanted to talk to you because you are best known for being Dr. Karl on Neighbours, but you have a career that spans a lot more than that. Could you tell us a brief summary of what sort of gets you to this point?
Of course. Well, I've been a performer since I was a young boy. At school, I was very, very keen on it and had great teachers. And we did lots and lots and lots of plays in secondary school. So at university, I kept dropping out of university and doing plays and so forth until I went professional at age 20 and did a lot of theatre. In Perth, I did tons of plays back to back. Then theatre in Sydney. I did a lot of theatre in Melbourne as well. Done a lot of pantomime, so the stage is a big love for me. And during the 80s, I kind of started in the TV, doing some fabulous series in the 80s. And then, of course, into the 90s, I did a show called Embassy, which became a stint on Neighbours in 1994 on a one-year contract. And history.
The rest is history, because this year it's 30 years.
It is. It's going to be 30 years for Jackie and I in August. I mean, yes, of course, there was a bit of a break in filming, but because we don't, well, Jackie and I, for years now, we haven't actually filmed every week of the year. So we're taking it on calendar years of being there, which I think is fair enough. Yeah. And of course, next year, 2025, is the 40th anniversary of Neighbours. So it's huge.
Yeah, and as a fan, that's very, very exciting. And I remember the Kennedys arriving on Neighbours.
Wow. You must have been 2.
You're very flattering. No, well, how old was I? 94. 8. 8, I would have been.
There you go.
Yeah, not quite. But I'd watched it for a few years before that, so I remember a few things. But that's like, when people talk about that, I remember that moment, and that's when, that's like my core family, and you've obviously sort of always been there. So, and Neighbours has been something that I grew up with, and you must hear that a lot from fans.
Oh yeah. Well, the thing is, when I went, obviously I didn't know how big Neighbours was until I started doing pantomime. So in 1999, I went to Clondino and did a panto there, and I was amazed at how many people loved the show. But in 2004, I formed a rock band, and we used to play here at the Neighbours Night in Melbourne, and which was immensely popular. It was backpackers from the UK, principally from the UK, but also from Belgium and Holland, and some Aussies, and they'd pack this pub out every Monday, and my band started playing there, and very quickly we recorded an album, and we were invited to tour the UK. So we did 10 tours of the UK, huge tours, massive audiences, And it was really funny because, of course, Dr. Karl has the reputation of being a rubbish musician. And so most people told me when they first came along to see me that they were coming because they expected to see a train wreck. They thought it would be a comedy show. But of course, I was working with some fabulous musicians, and I've been a singer all my life. So we actually put on a really kind of powerhouse rock show. A lot of indie British pop rock. Bands like the Fratellis, Kaiser Chiefs, you name it. A bit of classic rock, Queen, and so forth, and Foo Fighters, you name it. I mean, we threw everything at it, as well as singing some originals and lovely comedy songs about Susan Kennedy. So the audiences just loved it and kept inviting us back. And that was kind of a very golden period for me, I have to say, to be able to do music and Neighbours at the same time.
Yeah, and that's something that I wanted to talk to you about, was about like sort of being able to follow your dreams. And I think a lot of people may look at particularly actors or musicians who, look really successful. They seem to be living the dream, but it can't have possibly been that simple overnight thing.
No, not really. I mean, not as an actor. Of course, you've got to just work very, very hard to get the work, and a lot of actors are unemployed for large periods of time.
Yeah.
So that's why it's quite unique that myself and Ryan Maloney and Stephen Dennis and Jackie, as well as a few others, it's so unique that we've been basically employed full time for 30 years, and it doesn't happen in this business. It just doesn't happen, except for occasionally a few soaps. Obviously Corrie's very famous for having the very first, there was an actor who was in the very, very first episode and was, I think, still in it, or certainly to very recently. But it just doesn't happen, really. And people are just so envious of me. Other actors, they go, oh, God, I would kill for that. Because, of course, you see, of course, actors love doing a diversity of work. Don't get me wrong. And I've been able to do a diverse range of work as well as Neighbours. But we're all just humans who have families and kids, and everyone has to be brought up, and bills have to be paid, and so forth. And if it's not a struggle because you're full-time working, then that just exacerbates the joy of working, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about getting into performing at quite a young age. Have you always felt that sort of purpose to entertain?
Yeah, interesting. I was never really a show-offy kid. I'm actually, arguably, I actually can be quite shy. People who know me or have met me wouldn't say that. They say I'm quite gregarious, but I am a bit of a loner in the sense I do need a fair bit of time by myself, and but it is, so when I go out into the world being an actor or a musician or whatever, then I love it, because it is kind of like putting on a coat of many colors in a way. You go into, like, if I'm performing in a gig, it's my responsibility to make sure everyone walks out that door at the end of the night very happy. I do love meeting fans of the show, though. This has kind of been a bit of a foible for me. Some actors they're a little bit reluctant to interact a lot with fans, but I'm kind of a bit on overdrive the other way, because I really like answering messages on social media. I'd like, people email me. I've got a subscriber base. People subscribe to my website, and I send them birthday messages, and I just love that, the fact that I can kind of, then my fans are my touchstone. They're what basically, they're the reason I've had any success, and I think I share a kind of relationship with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember meeting you at a gig in Worcester last year.
And Mars Bar,
yeah, exactly, the Mars Bar, and I just sort of a bit blown away about how pleased you were, and it just completely genuinely, to meet me and meet all the other people there who were so excited to meet you. And
well, it's been like that all my whole career to have that. But the thing with meeting people at music gigs, because I'm playing Americana music and I'm fairly new to that, people are just getting to know my new music. the fact that anyone would make the effort to come out and see me is I'm just blown away by it. You know, it's not as though they would know much about what I was about to show them. So that shows a real interest in me and in Neighbours, I suppose, as well. So I was just eternally grateful, and that's the way I look at all my gigs. I'm planning this year's tour, but I'm doing it a bit differently this time. I'm because so many people come back to my gigs over and over. I'm going out of my way to make sure I know kind of exactly who's going to be there. You know, and I'm bringing a few presents for people, and I just want to have that sense that when they come and see one of my gigs, that they could be sitting in their lounge room, you know, having a chat with me. You know, it's kind of like it should be like that.
Absolutely. I haven't decided which one I'm going to yet. It's either going to be Worcester again, or it might be one of the other ones, depending on some friends in different parts of the country where we're going to go. But,
well, you make sure you let me know when you're coming.
Oh, don't worry, I will. So where did the love for Americana music come from?
Well, it's actually long-standing for me. Country music has always been a favourite genre of mine. I mean, I loved country music when it wasn't necessarily fashionable. It was quite a sort of boutique genre in a way in the big cities of Australia, and certainly even in the UK. But now country music is the fastest growing genre of music in the UK, reportedly. It's huge here in Australia. It's very often quite a rural thing here in Australia. There's more country towns and so forth, and which is very pleasurable because they're beautiful places to visit. But in the UK, it's right across the UK. I mean, you know, the huge CTCs and the big concert now that are happening in the UK is testament to that. But I fell in love with Americana music way back in the 70s, and there were some great musicians that I was really drawn to, like Chris Christopherson, of course, Johnny Cash, Bob Dylan. You know, is in many ways a country artist, but a guy who became seminal for me was John Prine. John Prine is someone who not everybody knows of, but those who love the genre will have come across him at some stage. And much of my songwriting is kind of, you know, orientated in a way that I think John Prine would write. I'd like to think I was as good as him, but I know I'm not. And then, of course, you've got the wonderful female country singers, Emmylou Harris being one of the greatest folk singers, country singers, and used to listen to Joni Mitchell, love Joni Mitchell, and Janice Ian, and you know, there's a lot of singers who were bordering on country and folk. I love folk music. I love Celtic music, Irish music. So when in 2019 I went and did a John Prine tribute show at our massive country music festival, I ran into two musos, like Lachlan, Bryan and Damian Cafarella, who produce music and are fine Americana artists, and they're the ones who said, come on, bring us some of your songs, let's see what you've got, let's record something. And it's, as they say, the rest is history.
Point.
That's the album, The Point. Yeah, we put out a single called "Sorry Is the Word," which was the first country single. It was a duet in a sort of Dolly Parton style with Elise Platt, who used to be Jen Handley on Neighbours, and some other characters. She's a beautiful singer. And then I put out an EP, and then the album, The Point, which I'm very proud of. And I'm writing songs at the moment. I'm blessed also because my beautiful wife, Jen, of 34 years now, she plays piano with me. She plays keyboard, and we sing some duets. We've just recorded the new one. And the audiences are beginning to really, it's becoming quite a big thing, our relationship and our banter on stage now. And the audiences love to come out and see Jen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a pleasure to meet Jen at the gig in Worcester as well, and yeah, you do have a great stage presence together, and it's really lovely. And it's interesting because you do share about your relationship on social media. Obviously Jen comes on stage with you, she's a sort of part of your, you know, you're obviously married for 34 years, she's a huge part of your story and your life, and I suppose a huge part of your personal brand. And it's something I really wanted to ask you about, Fletch, because you're obviously you, but a lot of us know you as Karl, and part of your personal brand. So I have a personal brand, and it's Lauren Malone, but I'm not playing a character on stage, you know, on TV that is probably, hopefully, in a lot of ways, very different from you.
Yeah.
Karl.
Well, I think Karl and I share the same hairline. That's about it. I mean, I love playing Karl because there's so many things about him that I'm asked to say and do that I would never do. So, and the big challenge for actors, I mean, the whole thing about being an actor is when you do something as a character, you have to do it in such a way that you believe in it enough for an audience to believe in it.
Yeah.
So all the silliness about Karl, like his money pinching habits and his huge ego and things like that, and his philandering ways in the past, and all those sorts of things, they're so fun to do because they're not part of my ethos at all. It's real joy. It's like Stephen Dennis, of course, who gets to play Paul.
Yeah.
He has a wonderful time because he plays such a Machiavellian character when he himself is the least Paul character you'd ever meet in your life.
Do you find people mistake the two personas?
You know, I've never really had a sense of that. I've always had a sense that people enjoy the fun of it. Not that they don't actually sit there and sort of go, oh, when they meet me, Alan Fletcher, they don't expect me to be like Karl.
Yeah.
I think what they enjoy is the fun of it, of calling me Karl and us joking around about being Karl, or you know, me taking their pulse, or you know, just doing things like that and having a bit of a joke. So, and of course, you know, when you do videos for people through all the video platforms and birthday videos and things, sometimes, you know, you're asked to muck around a bit and be in character and things like that, which is always fun to do.
Yeah.
But I think people have a really healthy perception that I am quite different from my character.
Well, that is good to know. Because the podcast is called "Well, I Fucked It Up." Karl does fuck it up a few times.
He does fuck it up. I mean, you know, he killed Cheryl Stark. Can we be frank about that?
You said about Karl taking my pulse. I was like, I don't think that's what I want to in an emergency.
Yeah, well, I certainly wouldn't want anyone to believe that I was a doctor and expect me to act in an emergency because I couldn't do it. Have
you ever had that? Have I made this story? I've got this idea in my head that there's a story there, but it could be that I'm thinking of something. Anyway, I digress because I could make some stories up about you being mistaken for a doctor and stuff. That would be really funny. You just imagine someone like choking in a restaurant or something and be like, "There's a doctor here." You're like, no. Yeah, I know. When I'd hide it under the table. No, although to be honest with you, there have been a few times where I mean, I kind of instinctively, if someone, you know, has a tumble or something around me, I do instinctively sort of go in and try and lend assistance. And there were famously on Neighbours once, one of our camera people passed out. They actually collapsed, and I rushed up to them and put them into the recovery position, and sort of, you know, we're just calling out to them to see if they could hear me and check the tongue and so forth, and did all the usual things. And someone came up and once he'd revived and he had been taken away to be checked, one of the cast did come up to me and say, "Fletch, you know you're not really a doctor, right?" You're just so method acting in the moment. Yeah, well, I mean, I think any reasonable person would do that. These days, of course, on Neighbours there we have trained first aid officers on set, or you know, all the time. So you know, I could just run the other way. Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other stories about things going wrong on set that you could share with us? Oh, there's so many of them. Some of them are pretty gross, actually. Oh, no. I mean, there was one where there's a story where Karl decided to save money, as Karl does. Yeah. That for Libby and Drew's wedding, instead of you know, buying a roasting pig and getting it cooked, he would buy a pig, and he would you know, slaughter the pig himself and cook it. So he comes home with a pig, and it's a little one, a little small pig, and I'm holding him, and the pig is terrified. I mean, pigs don't like to be held much by people and picked up in the air,
So we're standing outside the Kennedy House door, and just as we were supposed to come in on action, as soon as they said action, the pig relieved itself in my arms, and it was the most outstandingly unpleasant thing that's ever happened. And every actor flew in every different direction. This poor little terrified piglet was scared to death, basically. So there's been a few things like that. There's always a lot of mistakes happen on sets for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And we generally play up on them a lot. Particularly people getting hit in the head accidentally by booms. We had a bird called Dal, a galah, who famously. Dal bit people all the time, and acting with Dal was quite terrifying. Dal primarily bit females. Margot Robbie was a victim. I know that on the couch at the Kennedys. Dal would sit on her perch and occasionally get up the strength to jump from her perch to the back of the couch while we were acting, and we would see this out of the corner of your eye, and you go, "Oh God, here she comes." And you try to do your scene and do your acting as she's coming along the couch behind you. And sometimes she would jump on my shoulder. She used to rub her beak on Tom Oliver's chest hair.
Oh.
So all sorts of things would be going on. But she bit the women, who, of course, would be terrified if they were on the couch and Dale showed up. We've had some fun. Particularly, the animals are always fun. My pet rooster called Springsteen was gorgeous. So but there's a lot of things can go wrong with animals.
I remember the sheep. You had a sheep.
Yes, Casserole. Casserole was the first sheep, and then Casserole literally got to end of life.
Yeah.
So we farewell Casserole, and then saved a little lamb from a snake at my father's farm, and we named that little lamb Chop.
Oh. I love it. But they say don't act with animals and children, and Neighbours has both.
We do, and we actually have some really, really lovely children. Like young Tanner and Aisha, I was working with today. Toadie's kids. We've got some great animals. Animals as well. Trevor the dog is the most gorgeous creature, but he is the biggest buff that ever walked the earth. I mean, Trevor can be a little bit to contain for the actors, so that there's a bit of work. As soon as there's an animal on set, you've just got another layer of things that can go terribly, terribly wrong.
I can imagine, but probably terribly, terribly funny along with it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've even had a horse in the Kennedy house.
Of course you did. But with I suppose the beauty of acting on TV is you do get another chance. It's not live. It's if you do get pooed on by a pig, you can have another
basically. Well, basically, yes. Of course, and that's the fun of it, is knowing that I mean, it is tempered a little bit though by the fact that Neighbours it takes you have to shoot it really super quick. So you kind of can't afford for too much to go wrong.
Yes, but that's obviously very different to acting on the stage.
Yes, well, things go terribly wrong on the stage, and it happens in front of the audience, and the audience are fully aware of it. My favourite stage story was I was actually watching this play, not in it. It was a murder mystery. It was in Perth in the early years, and someone had to draw out a pistol and shoot someone on stage.
Yeah.
So they drew out the pistol, but it didn't fire. And after several attempts to get this pistol to fire, the actor had to improvise, so they ran up and kicked their victim and said, "Poison boot." And then the actor who'd been kicked then went into the throes of being poisoned and died.
Oh, brilliant.
What a spectacular thing.
That's amazing. And I've had a few funny, because I actually wanted to be an actress. That was my sort of dream when I was growing up. And I did a lot of panto and amdram stuff as a kid, and I remember doing a panto and I was the baddie's assistant and I had to carry the box, like this big box on. It was obviously empty, but it was supposed to be really heavy, but it was quite heavy for me, who was probably about 7 or something, and I dropped it on my toe. I was like hobbling about, and we did another one. It reminded me with the death story, and it was this Amdram competition thing, and there was a story, it was called like When the Butler Did It, and it was about all the characters basically got killed off in lots of different ways, and it was a sort of, but I'd gone to the loo and missed my death scene.
Ouch.
I know. So then walked on, supposed to be dead, and sort of had to just die quietly at the background while someone else was ruined it.
Well, you were dying 2 deaths there, really, weren't you? Death of mortification.
Are you dead? Oh! And they were using balloons as the gunshot, off stage. So I think our stage manager was sort of there ready to pop the balloon and timing, and there were a few gunshots that didn't land.
Yes, it's like when telephones don't ring and
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
But I wanted to ask you specifically about this, because a lot of the people who listen to this podcast run their own businesses, and a lot of that does mean about being sort of visual and standing up, whether it's at a networking meeting, whether it's at on an actual stage and they do more public speaking, or whether it's just online, coming and doing a live on Instagram, that kind of thing. And a lot of people are really afraid of it because of the things that could go wrong. And I have talked about that with you. I've got so many stories of things that have gone wrong for me doing those exact things. But as a professional actor, what would you advise to someone in that position who's being held back because of that fear?
Well, I would say that you actually can't. I'll give you an example so you can see what I'm talking about. When I did a beautiful production of My Fair Lady, playing Professor Higgins,
and
something like that. Yeah, it was around that time in Melbourne, and I'd learned my part thoroughly. I thought I know exactly what I'm doing. It's opening night. We'd have our first audience, and I forgot the words of the very first song.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was a shattering thing. I sang the wrong verse at the wrong time and got myself in a complete flummox. Of course, the orchestra was still playing on, and even though I got through the song and managed to get through the performance, it ruined my night, and I was mortified. And but I didn't want to go to the opening night party because I thought, and when I eventually did go to the party and looked around, and no one was talking to me about me, missing my lines. Most people didn't even notice. And I also looked around and I thought to myself, why have I robbed myself of the joy of this opening night because of a few words I got wrong? And then I realized it's just my ego. My ego is saying everyone must think I'm dreadful because I mucked up, as opposed to going, everyone mucks up, so I'll just own it.
Yeah.
And I think if you make a mistake in any dealings you have with people, whether it's public speaking or whatever, you just got to own it up, just own it, have a laugh about it and go, well, I got that terribly wrong. Look at that. Someone spilt coffee all over my notes. I have no idea what I'm supposed to say next. People like vulnerability. They like to see vulnerability. And when if you're nervous, then it's actually no great issue to sit back and if you start to shake, you go, check this out. Oh, look how nervous I am. Never mind. But of course there are all the obvious things that people talk about too, and that's actually making sure that when you're addressing an audience, you really think about as being you're addressing one person. Take down you've got to reduce the stakes. And just sort of, just sit back and say, I'm giving a presentation to someone I know very well, one-on-one, and I'll deliver it. I'll just deliver it like that. It's just pick out different people to look at different times, and it often flows quite naturally.
Yeah, and it gets easier with practice.
Oh yeah, public speaking certainly does. Acting does as well, but it only gets. And it only gets easier. The big key, the huge key to that I've learned in my career, and particularly in music, is preparation is everything.
Yeah.
You can never be too prepared. But what often mucks people up is they prepare at home or in their office by themselves, and they get it down absolutely patched, so they feel completely confident and feel like they know everything. As soon as they get in front of people, they fall apart. And that's happened to me on a number of occasions, particularly with music. And when I say you've got to prepare like, so it could be a jackhammer going off next door and you could still continue on. Someone could throw an apple at you which just misses your head and you could carry on.
Is that
because
Jen does in helping you practice? Do you get Jen to throw?
I sit there and Jen pelts tennis balls at me. But I mean, it is obviously ideal. It is ideal if you can, whether it's music or whatever, if you can get a chance to do a warm-up, to do a presentation to say 10 friends or whatever, or just say to some people, do you mind if I just sing a song to you or something like that. You just got to get used to doing things in front of other people who are kind of looking at you like this, like they don't give you much. So it's preparation and just try and make sure that you've got it prepared to the point where it's second nature. It's almost that you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is such a good tip, whether you're a performer or whether you're a small business owner who wants to stand up and do their 60-second picture networking. Find a business buddy and have a practice. That's such a great tip in front of somebody who's a safe space, but also that. Because it's also seeing people responding to you, isn't it? It's that sort of thing that you can't replicate without actually having people there.
Yeah, true. And I think if you look at the speeches, the great speeches of you think about, like, say, Steve Jobs when he'd be announcing an iPhone or something like that, or any of the Apple presenters, and Elon Musk when he's talking to an audience about his cars or about his solar. You can tell in their voice and in the way they present how excited they are about what they're telling people. And I think an audience will respond to anybody who appears to be very enthusiastic and excited about what they're saying. So if you've got a presentation to do and it bores you, it'll bore the audience. So you got to find a way that it doesn't bore you, and you got to find what's exciting. I mean, I'm doing a speech trying to sell toilet roll holders, and so I have to genuinely, find out. What I like about toilet roll holders. I mean, even it's just seeing easy with this thing. The toilet paper doesn't go all over the floor anymore. It's a miracle.
Sold.
Sold.
But I suppose that links back to like how challenging it must be to play a character that you don't relate to so much. So like you said, like Karl says and does things that you just don't, but you've got to find that humanity.
Oh yeah, Oh, totally. But that's the joy of acting. Is actually just supplanting yourself into somebody else. Just owning their character, but you also really do have to try and find the justifications in it, so you can actually sit there and sort of go, okay, I realise that most people would think this behaviour is really bad. So how do I find a way to believe in it myself? Believe that a person would do this. And really, you only have to look around the world to see that most people in the world will pretty much do almost anything if there's a stimulus to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something that one of the reasons I actually really love Neighbours is because there is that sort of, you can understand the intention behind even the worst things that the best loved characters, and of course Paul is probably the best example of doing some really horrific things, but I would class myself as a Paul defender because I'm like, I can see, because of the way it's written and the way it's acted and the way it's been portrayed over years and years and years, you really sort of understand that. But there's also, and I say this about Neighbours, is there's this sort of element of ridiculous, so it's fake as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Izzy character was really classically what you're talking about, because she behaved very badly and did terrible things and lied and cheated and so forth. But she always did it kind of out of a desperation to survive.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, you know, I'm going, watch me be evil. It was like, she had to say what she said, because if she didn't, she'd lose Karl, or this would happen, or that would happen. So it was the only way she could keep the ball up in the air was to be the person she was. And Natalie Bassingthwaighte played Izzy to an absolute T and made everything she did so real that I mean, I think everybody just continued to love the character, no matter how badly she behaved.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully we'll see. I'd love Izzy to come back and do a cameo, because now Holly's in there all the time. It'd be so lovely to, like, oh, I love it. I get so excited. But you're probably not allowed to give me any spoilers.
Oh no, I'm not. But obviously you mentioned Holly, Lucinda Armstrong Hall. She's such a wonderful performer, and she has managed to craft Holly to have elements of Izzy in her.
Yes.
And her behaviour, that is just really nicely subtle. It's just there, and she gets herself increasingly into a lot of strife, our Holly. But we don't really get disappointed in her for doing it, because we can kind of see why she would do that.
Oh, Izzy's daughter.
yeah, exactly. Like daughter, like mother.
So how far ahead do you film? Like, what do you like? What are you doing at the moment? Like, when will we see that?
Oh, it's a good question, actually.
Or is it all so mixed up that it?
Well, the thing is, the thing that's thrown it out a little bit is, it used to be quite a definite thing when Neighbours was shown 5 times a week, but now Neighbours is only on 4 times a week. We're kind of making the program slightly faster than you're seeing it. So the time difference, of course, can actually start to blow out. But then we go on a break from filming, and everyone starts to catch up again. So at any given moment, it's a little bit hard to know how far ahead we are. In fact, none of us really do know. I've got a very silly story coming up, which is just literally about the land for Karl Kennedy, and everyone kept saying to me, when's that story happening? When's that story happening? I haven't the faintest idea. But then I saw something in the press today to say, oh, it must be pretty much now. So it's a bit of guesswork in that.
Well, I look forward to watching it. My husband and I, we watch Neighbours every evening. And
bless.
He didn't watch it before me.
Well, you keep me in a job if you watch.
Can we talk a little bit about when Neighbours was cancelled?
Yeah.
Like, how was that?
Well, it's interesting when, as an actor, you're used to being a rooster one day and a feather duster the next. You're on 1-year contracts. I've been on 20.
That's quite funny.
I've been an Aussie on that one. I mean, for the 30 years contracts that I've had on Neighbours, each one's been a 1-year contract. So it could have ended at any time.
Yeah.
And also the last contract we were on was slightly shorter than a year, because the decision as to whether or not Neighbours would continue with Channel 5 was going to be made by a certain time. So they had to have a bit of an insurance policy. So from my point of view, I just went, look, if it ends, it ends. I move on to something else, But when it ended for everyone at once, that's 200 people working in that place. It was pretty devastating to consider the ramifications of it. It meant that the literally thousands of actors and crew, tens of thousands of actors and crew who've worked on their show over time, who learnt on that show. It's the best school in the industry. The people who are thrown out of work, but then the fans. Then we started to get the feedback from the fans, and we're going, this is nuts. People are heartbroken. This was a huge part of people's lives. It was not just a TV show. It was actually part of their routine, part of their things that bound their family. Daughters would be coming to us saying, I used to watch this with my dear mum, and it's my only connection I have to her now, and things like that. So it was pretty moving and upsetting. We just decided to get on with it and make this the best show we could all the way to the end. And we made it. There were speeches at the end. There were some tears were shed. We packed ourselves up and went on with our lives. So that when Jason Herbers, our executive producer, came around and saw me one Friday and sort of said, "It's back. Would you do it?" I couldn't. It was just mind blowing. I couldn't imagine that it could have happened.
Yeah. Were you surprised at the sort of fan response? Was that a shock to you and the rest of the cast?
Well, I mean, at the end of the show, I think about 1.3 million people were watching Neighbours on Channel 5, in one way or another, either on catch up or something. So that's a lot of people. I mean, a lot of TV shows would love to have 1.3 million people watching them, and we were one of the top shows on Channel 5. But they made a business decision based on what they felt they should be producing, and that's their prerogative. And but I thought, oh gee, it's a shame. I thought that's a lot of people who enjoy the program, but it wasn't 1.3 million at all, because the people who were gutted were people who used to watch it or only watched it occasionally, but then suddenly realised what had happened and thought, oh no, Neighbours can't go. Neighbours is too much part of our history and everything. And so 5.5 million watched the last episode. Now, for Amazon to see that and go, this is nuts. I mean, truly, this is nuts. If that many people are going to watch it, then we should bring it back. And of course, to bring it back on a streaming platform, but a free streaming platform, which was really important, I think. I mean, for it to be on Freebie, and in Australia it's on free-to-air TV, but you can see it on Prime Video after about a week, I think it is. A week's lag. And it looks better on Prime, you know what I mean? It's better quality than it is on free-to-air. For people to be able to access it, and even better still, the other bonus is it comes out in the UK at like 7 a.m, I think. When in Australia it's later in the day, so it's pretty much simultaneous. No more spoilers from that point of view. No more people putting the program up on Daily Motion and all that sort of nonsense. So, it's been a huge benefit. I think we've got an infinitely better show, to be honest. I reckon the show is actually the best it's ever been.
It's phenomenal. I'm really, really enjoying what we call like new Neighbours. I mean, it's still the same old show. In a lot of senses, but it's had some amazing storylines, and because it's
and great new cast. I mean, fantastic cast. The Varga Murphy family has just worked so brilliantly, and obviously is wonderful. I mean, the fact that Georgie Stone came back. There's just so many these lovely new characters, as well of course. I mean, Margella playing Krista. If you've watched recent work where just very recently with her being shut in the sauna and how brilliant she is. We've got this great cast, wonderful camaraderie, but we've still got those people like Therese and Paul and Tony and so forth who've been around for a long time that audiences can relate to. So perfect blend. And they've just announced today that Harold's coming back too. So it's a lot of fun there.
Very, very exciting. Before we wrap up, Fletch, I want to ask you about some of your charity work, because you launched in the UK, it was in 2011, you launched Blue September, which is a charity all about cancer in men. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was a focus on men's cancer, particularly prostate cancer, of course, and testicular cancer, and the cancers are kind of fairly unique to men, but also generally into some of the cancers that tend to take men a lot earlier. it was one of the focuses, of course, was the fact that men don't tend to get themselves checked out.
Yeah.
So a lot of times men die of preventable cancers that women might not, because they're more sensible, as we all know.
Yeah.
And they do go to the doctor if they've got some aches and pains.
Yeah.
I've also, my wife and I have also done a lot of work for breast cancer charities for the same reason, because that's if detected early, it's a lot more preventable as well. And so it was great fun doing that work, and to be able to do it in London as well.
Yeah, and because there was a storyline not that long ago in Neighbours about getting men getting checked out, and Hendrix found out that he had something, all of that went on. Did that feel really good to be able to sort of really shine a light on such an important issue using the show as
well, that's where I think Neighbours has been terrific. I mean, we've done some very important stories. Hendrix's one was very important.
As well.
Yeah, the ovarian cancer story for Sonia was very powerful. Ovarian cancer is a real shocker because it's very hard to detect it. There's often no particular symptoms before it's got to an advanced stage, and it can actually spread right throughout the body very quickly. So very hard one to beat. So raising awareness about that was very important. Also raising money, like by promoting the charity in its day, or just things like Daffodil Day and so forth on set. It can really, really help. But Susan's MS storyline, same deal, raised enormous awareness about MS, which people don't tend to talk about a great deal, and it's hard for them to raise money. So it's important, I think, that a show like ours does that. I mean, Neighbours now strives for a very, very high level of diversity as well, so that we do try as much as possible to truly reflect a society that has disability, that is and multiracial and so forth, and diverse sexualities. I think it's a really important role for a show to play in society.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
Well, just first, what I'd really like to do is just say thank you, because I was on set today watching the camaraderie of the crew and the actors and all these new actors who are just starting to get to experience the love that there is for Neighbours. And I thought, all the time, it's ever present in my mind just how grateful we all are to the fact that people watching save the show, but the people watching also contribute to the show, because their social media posts and the things that people say about Neighbours, that gets listened to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So in a way, it's kind of like what people wish for, they often get.
Yeah.
Because if enough people wish for it, then the writers see that. So there's an awful lot of interaction between the fans and us as a show that I don't think happens with very many others. And so we're just eternally grateful for it.
Oh, fabulous. And you're coming to the UK in July?
Yeah, July. It started on the 11th of July and go right through to the 4th of August. Very excited to be playing Kendal Calling Festival up in Lowther, which is a massive festival. I don't know if I'll get to meet Noel Gallagher, but I'll give it a crack. So that's a huge festival, and it's going to be wonderful to do it. But also touring all over the country. And we're going from Penzance down the bottom to Aberdeen up the top.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to get to Inverness. I haven't given up on that. We're going to be at Hassocks right down the bottom on the east coast, and of course joyously across to Dublin as well. So the only thing that I'm gutted about at the moment is we don't have a Welsh gig, so my UK tour is incomplete. But I am busily negotiating to try and get myself a Welsh venue. So
let's manifest that now, everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love going to Wales, and Wales, of course, has always loved Neighbours enormously. So yeah, I'll be crisscrossing the country, and you'll have a link which people can go to if they want to find out where I'm going to be. But my website, alanfletcher.net. I also have a music one, alanfletchermusic.com. So I love people to go there because they'll see lots of clips and things. So I just love to see as many people on this tour, this music tour, because it means an enormous amount to me, and it's a very good opportunity for us to catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely be at one of the gigs. Like I said, I haven't decided which one I'll be at, but I will definitely be at least one. I went to, like I said, the Worcester one last April, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoy the album as well. So yeah, it's going to be a great, great night out for everybody.
Marvellous. And I'll have some new stuff for you as well.
Oh, exciting, exciting. Fletch, thank you so much for your
Huge
time
pleasure.
today, for your wonderful energy, and for joining me on the Well I Fucked That Up podcast.
It's a great pleasure. All the best, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you so much for listening to the Well I Fucked That Up podcast. I've been Lauren Malone. It's important to acknowledge that the intro and outro music was written and performed by Bryan. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. So do come say hi over on my Instagram at lauren.malone.coaching. Down in the show notes, you will find the links to my freebies as well.
But hey, that's okay. We've got another day to make mistakes and say sorry. There's no sense in our worry, 'cause all we can do is try our best to make it through with love.